Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with humility and resolve on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, the first day of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This is a day that demands truth-telling. It reminds us that for an issue as urgent and as widespread as gender-based violence, words alone have never been enough. Safety requires real action. Every level of government carries that responsibility, and I'd like to thank Madame Provost for beginning our day and reminding us of that. When governments hesitate, when they fail to make violence prevention a priority, lives remain at risk. We see the consequences in our communities. We feel them in our families. We witness them in grief carried by loved ones who should have never had to bury our daughters, sisters, aunties, friends. Gender-based violence flows through our homes, through our bones, through our workplaces, public spaces, and online spaces. It does not confine itself. It reaches everywhere, which means our response must reach just as far. Experts, frontline workers, municipal leaders, and even former Attorney General have all said the same thing. Gender-based violence and intimate partner violence amounts to an epidemic in Canada. An epidemic demands, Mr. Speaker, a whole government response. Nothing less is acceptable. Ending violence means speaking clearly against the growing force of far-right misogyny, anti-feminist rhetoric, the anti-2S LGBTQIA+ hate. These ideologies do not exist in isolation. They have long been tied to violent extremism. We remember the women murdered at École Polytechnique in 1989. We honor them by refusing to let hatred take root again. Again, I would like to honor Madame Provost for sharing her story today. Yet today, some elected representatives openly court groups that spread these hateful beliefs. Others soften or abandon their commitments to gender-based equality to appease anti-feminist voices. This is a betrayal of every woman and every gender-diverse person who has ever feared for their safety. We must stand against this extremism with absolute clarity and without hesitation. We cannot confront gender-based violence without naming racism and the ongoing legacy of colonialism and genocide. Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse people face higher rates of violence in this country, 6 times more likely than non-Indigenous women to experience femicide. The crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse people is not symbolic. It is not historic. It is a national emergency. The former Prime Minister recognized this as an ongoing genocide, yet in this year's budget, Mr. Speaker, they did not include a single mention of this crisis. We are not invisible. This omission is even more alarming when the budget centers projects of national interest that involve resource extraction on Indigenous lands and territories. Because we know that man camps and transient workforces increase violence against Indigenous women and girls. The Status of Women Committee, in fact, confirmed in the study during the last Parliament, calling for greater corporate responsibility and meaningful safety planning. Still, this government presented a plan crafted without participation of Indigenous women and without meaningful commitments to community safety. This is unacceptable. This is turning a blind eye to our genocide. Indigenous women will not sit quietly while governments ignore our right to safety, our right to dignity. We deserve more than symbolic gestures. We deserve life-saving investment, long-term commitment, and accountability rooted in justice. The budget also lacked concrete plans for affordable housing, rent geared to income units, safer shelter places. These are not optional supports. They are essential lifelines for people fleeing violence. We know that poverty reduction is not separate from safety. It is the foundation of it. People cannot escape violence if they cannot afford to survive. This is why New Democrats continue to push for deeply affordable housing, a guaranteed livable basic income, because we know that safety grows from stability. Safety grows from dignity. I offer my deepest gratitude to frontline organizations who continue to meet this crisis with courage and compassion. They hold the line when every other system breaks down. They create refuge where none exists. When government attempted, in fact, to gut Women and Gender Equality Department, it was these organizations that advocated and protected this vital funding. Their work quite literally saves lives. But we cannot accept half measures. We cannot accept a government that ignores reproductive health, cuts essential supports for refugees, or steps aside the needs of survivors. To fight gender-based violence is to defend human rights in their entirety. Every policy choice strengthens or weakens that defense. Because these struggles are not abstract, Mr. Speaker. They're about real peoples with real stories. And I hold deep the love for survivors, for families, for communities, including my own. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, as we began the 16 days of activism, we are also witnessing a troubling shift on the global stage. On the eve of this campaign, Prime Minister Carney has chosen to court closer ties with the UAE while diluting Canada's commitments to gender equality. This signals to the world that Canada no longer expects meaningful progress on human rights in exchange for diplomatic favor. Today, I call on all parliamentary colleagues to join me in a simple but profound commitment. Let us defend the right of every person in this country to live free from violence. Let us defend the right of every person around the world to live free in violence, and let us choose courage over convenience. Mr. Speaker, let us act.